I'm David Squibb. I'm a Boston-based artist, and I work at home in my studio in the South End.
Okay. Well, let's first talk about your approach to art. It seems to be very cerebral, meaning that you think and rethink an idea before you actually put pen to paper. Is that your usual approach, or is this just something that you're doing for your current body of work?
It's a new approach. I think it arises out of my marketing experience. I'm a copywriter in the advertising industry. I used to be a graphic designer / art director. I think the consistent planning and cogitating and strategizing about where a project is going to go and making sure that that project has legs to be extended in a marketing context has finally sort of irretrievably influenced my fine art. So there's no reason to divorce that side of myself from my artwork. It's just kind of running with it, and I'm really happy with the results. I got a painting degree from the University of Tennessee, and I had two major influences there. One teacher named Whitney Leland, who was a non-objective painter, and he restricted us to a limited palette so that we would really learn to work with color without squeezing it out of the tube, but rather create it through layers and experimentation. His style and focus, sort of expressionistic, was really part and parcel of the philosophy of the times. Well, at the same time, at the University of Tennessee, I had another teacher who was a classically trained painter who'd studied under Buckminster Fuller and Wayne Thiebaud, and he insisted that we learn technique and classical depiction of objects and how to make an object turn in space. He was a bit like Van Gogh. He wore a tie to class and was rather stern and actually looked a lot like Vincent van Gogh.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about your latest show on Art Sizzle. It's, as you mentioned, a continuation of your Barn Find series, and it sort of combines the two elements that you were talking about: your left brain, your right brain, the technical process. I wouldn't say versus the artistic process. It's sort of a combination of both. So, how did you arrive at that approach to the art for this exhibition?
I was really excited to start creating digital artworks. Took a lot of planning, a lot of guessing. It was as difficult and challenging as doing traditional media, and the result is satisfying, but I felt like there's a certain amount of street cred that would be lost if I'm presenting works that are entirely digital, as opposed to also representing my artistic skill as a painter. So I've now found a way to extrapolate on the Barn Find series and bring traditional media into it and combine the two. And that's really what it's all about. It's really gratifying to do both and not have to choose one over the other. The ultimate fantasy, the ultimate romance among people who love cars, whether they collect them or not, but primarily among collectors, is to discover some jewel or some gem hidden away in a barn. And it's a real phenomenon. It happens a lot. People find rarities hidden under a tarp and wasting away in a barn. And I wanted to represent that sense of possibility and sort of dreamlike longing that people have for finding a treasure hidden inside of a barn somewhere in Iowa, perhaps.
And by treasure, you mean an automobile?
An automobile, absolutely. Something that they covet and can rebuild and have something of value. There's such a history and a story there. It's all part of the romance of the automobile, and cars to me are more than machines. Cars are, they're like living, breathing, it's the living, breathing essence of life. They represent the heights of engineering achievement, heights of artistic accomplishment. They tell the American story, the great open highway, Route 66, the great era of the 50s with Harley Earl and the incredible paint and chrome and excitement that was post-war that really the car represented and built upon. And I finally realized that as it's really my primary passion, in a way that a lot of guys, their primary passion is football or basketball, why not just incorporate it into my art and coalesce that? And I have endless ideas concerning the subject matter. So it made sense to me, and I'm really happy that I finally got there.
So what's interesting though is you mentioned, we were talking about left brain, right brain in the process versus just sort of going and doing it. The first American Barn Find series was your digital work, which sounds like you sound very passionate about cars, but it was very sort of structured, and the copy and the framing. And now in this continuation of that series, you've added the watercolor. So it seems like more of your passion is seeping into the art versus where you started. Is that just by coincidence, or was that by plan?
I guess it was cerebral. Barn Finds, the first take with the digital expression, with the typography and the messages that were jumbled. You had to really decode what's in the pieces, and that's still part of it. That's important to it. My feeling is, if you were to uncover an automobile in a barn, you're going to see just sort of the nose of the car peeking out from under a tarpaulin. You're going to notice an old shoe in the back seat. You're going to have to pop the hood and figure out what's under the hood in terms of a motor. And I tried to represent the discovery of the find in the digital side of the work, where the type describes what the discovery is, what the car is, what was the original factory color. Your mind doesn't respond to a discovery like that in a linear fashion. Bits and pieces fly through your brain in a sort of disconnected order. And I wanted to really represent that typographically. Just this rush of influence, this rush of inputs that you would experience when you would find this treasure hidden in a barn. I think just the typographic forms alone lacked the dreamlike quality I was trying to achieve. I wanted to represent the passion and romance, and combining the digital work with the traditional watercolor media has really brought it to an entirely new level. And now it's depicting kind of a dreamscape of discovery and possibility. The barn obviously represents a place. The barn is closed. There's a latch. You have to envision what's beyond it. And this owl is flying out through a crack in the door. And he's a barn owl, of course, and he's seen a lot, and he knows what's inside. And the owl is wisdom, and seemed like a perfect representation of this sort of dreamlike landscape I wanted to create throughout the series.
Right, and you're calling it a dreamscape, but also, to me, we'd mentioned before, it seems like these are memories from childhood. Were you really into like automobiles when you were growing up as a kid?
Right out of the womb, my aunt told me a couple years back that they used to have to drag me out from under cars by my feet. I don't remember a time when I wasn't obsessed with cars. I remember always climbing into the back of my mother's old Studebaker and literally being intoxicated by the smell of the horsehair in the seats, and the patina was just ripe at the time, even for a child. Just the romance. I was fascinated by cars. We'd take family trips, and I'd play a game where I would count cars. I would choose Volkswagens, my brother would choose Pontiacs, whatever. And it just was always a part and parcel of who I was growing up, and really drove my passion, pun intended.
I've noticed your art has sort of evolved from very bright colors when you did your early watercolor work to now more of a muted, almost a non-tonal approach with the Bar and Fine series. Is there anything behind that, or is it just you're sort of evolving your color palette, or?
It's funny, when I had a professor in college who made sure that we worked with a limited palette just to learn how to work with color. And I did that for years and years, using primary colors and white and cerulean blue, for instance, and really limiting my paintings to that. And I found that my paintings would all have sort of the same palette, and I sort of got tired of that over the years. I finally decided that I could use as many colors as I wanted. I'd earned the right to have a lot of tubes, so I ordered some watercolors from Japan. It's like 340 set, watercolor set. And I just sort of gave myself permission to pick and choose whatever shades and colors I wanted to work with. Ironically, then I decided that what fascinates me most is monochrome. So I'm doing these series that are individually monochromatic, but if you look at the body of work across the series, there's going to be a really complex array of colors. So I'm kind of going in both directions at one time, which is gratifying. My early work, I think, was heavily influenced by Van Gogh. I actually did a chair series that reminds me of his work, his piece of the chair with the pipe on it. I don't know the name of the piece, but it wasn't really deliberate, but he is my favorite artist, which isn't terribly original, but you know, he requires no justification. He's Van Gogh. Rich colors, a lot of storytelling, very inviting. So there's that side of the equation in terms of my influences, but I'm also heavily influenced by the pop artists. I'm not sure it showed up in my work early on. I think maybe more so now. Jasper Johns. I really admire during the 60s, during the pop art movement, how close the art was to culture. It was close to Main Street. I don't feel that's the case anymore. I feel that art's in more of a rarefied place, which is really a shame. I know that museum attendance is high, but there was something really fantastic happening during the time of Warhol and Lichtenstein, and these artists that weren't afraid to reference pop culture in their work, and hence the name. My brain, over the years, has seizes hold of expressions and statements that people make, and I would find that these things would rattle around my brain and recur, and I'd say them over and over again. Just silly phrases, things I remembered, maybe because they made me laugh as a child, or things that stuck in my head for no reason at all. And I thought, if something is surfacing that much in your mind, why not express it on canvas? So I created this series, the Heard series, and it's an entirely digital series, which also incorporates canvas, printed as giclée prints. Very gratifying because it kind of silenced the chatter in my brain, which was really the purpose of why I did the series. But also it was really a delight to do these pieces and send them to the people who had actually uttered the phrases. It sort of was really inclusive, and I got a kick out of that.
So do you have any advice for artists in general? I mean, you're at your mid-career now, and you still obviously have a lot of things to accomplish. Do you have any advice for younger artists starting out who, that haven't achieved sort of any kind of, I don't know, stardom or gotten a gallery or anything? Is there any words of encouragement you can give?
I had a grandfather who was a historian on the subject of Abraham Lincoln. He dedicated his life to that, and he followed his passion, and that is the key to happiness. My advice to anyone is, even if you have to do something else to make a living, keep painting, keep working, keep sculpting. You just have to keep going at it. And if you haven't found that thing that really excites you, you have a talent as an artist. Don't give up. I have an aunt who was never a painter and started painting about 15 years ago. And now she's put us all to shame, all the classically trained painters in the family. namely my sister and I. And she probably turns out 3 or 4 pieces a week, sells it all. She's tapped a vein, the likes of which I've never seen. And it's because she's found her passion and really discovered what it is that she should be doing, why she's on this earth. So as an artist, really, that's why you're here. So you have to really push for it and find it and run with it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.